Hey everyone, and welcome back. Are you ready for another deep dive?
Always. What are we getting into today?
Well, this time we're going on a culinary trip to Sweden.
Sweden. I'm assuming we'll be talking about their famous meatballs.
You know, Sweden is known for a lot more than just meatballs. But that actually is kind of related to one of the topics we'll be looking at today.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
So we're going to be examining two very different stories from Swedish culinary history. First up, we've got the surprising history of hamburgers in Sweden.
Hamburgers. I wouldn't exactly think of hamburgers as Swedish cuisine.
And you're right, you wouldn't. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. And to contrast that, our second source is all about a lavish dinner party hosted by a famous Swedish architect back in the 17th century.
Wow, a 17th century dinner party. Now that sounds interesting. I can only imagine the dishes they must have served back then. So what do these two seemingly unrelated stories have in common?
Well, you'll see. It's all about breaking the rules. But first, let's tackle those hamburgers. Get this. Hamburgers were once illegal in Swedish kiosks.
Whoa, 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 illegal. You're telling me hamburgers were actually against the law in Sweden?
Yep, you heard that right. Back in the day, Swedish kiosks had these strict rules about what they could sell. They were pretty much limited to traditional stuff like hot dogs and meatballs.
Interesting. I wonder why. Was there like a culinary purity movement going on or something?
It seems like there was a real push to preserve those traditional Swedish foodways, and maybe a bit of hesitation, perhaps even fear, of American fast food culture creeping in.
I see. So when did hamburgers finally break onto the scene in Sweden?
Well, they first popped up in 1955 at an exhibition in Helsingborg. And get this, they even banned ketchup for a while.
No, ketchup. The humanity. But I can kind of see how ketchup, coming from America, might have been seen as a threat to their culinary traditions.
You got it. So as you can imagine, those hamburgers at the exhibition caused quite a stir. People loved them. But there were still those pesky kiosk regulations.
Right. So how did hamburgers finally become legal?
Well, that's where our rule breaker comes in. A true rebel with a cause. His name was Erik Engström.
Erik Engström. All right, I'm all ears. Tell me about this guy.
So Engström owned a kiosk called Vegabaren in Haninge. And he was not about to let some silly rule stop him from selling those delicious hamburgers. So in 1957, he went ahead and put them on the menu.
I bet the authorities weren't too happy about that.
You bet they weren't. They showed up at his kiosk demanding to know what he thought he was doing.
So what did he do? I hope he didn't just back down.
Well, Engström was a pretty clever guy. When they confronted him, he simply said, "I'm not selling hamburgers, gentlemen. I'm selling flattened meatballs."
That's brilliant. He found a loophole.
He sure did. Technically, meatballs were allowed. So he outsmarted the whole system with a simple name change. Genius, right? All right, so we've got this famous architect, Nicodemus Tessin the Younger, hosting a fancy dinner party for royalty back in the 17th century. What can you tell us about this guy?
Oh, Tessin was a big deal. I mean, he designed Stockholm Palace, so you can imagine his dinner parties were probably pretty impressive too.
I bet. And hosting royalty for dinner back then, that was like the ultimate honor, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was an incredible opportunity to show off your wealth, your taste, all that.
Right, like a look at me, I'm so cultured kind of thing.
Exactly. And it was a chance to make connections, impress the right people. So yeah, there was a lot of pressure to get it right.
I can only imagine. So what kind of food did they actually serve at these fancy dinners?
Well, think opulence. We're talking roasted meats like suckling pig, dove.
Dove. Like
Wow.
the bird, people ate doves.
Yep. It was considered a delicacy back then.
Huh, interesting. What else?
Oh, and get this, they even served swan.
Swan. Wow, that's next level.
Right. And Tessin, he was a sophisticated guy, big fan of Italian cuisine, so he probably incorporated ingredients like lemons, truffles, pasta.
Pasta. That's surprising. I wouldn't think pasta would be a thing in Sweden back then.
Well, Tessin had traveled extensively in Italy, so he was really influenced by their cuisine.
And speaking of strange, what stood out to you as the most surprising or interesting fact from these stories?
I think for me, it's just that reminder that food is like never just about food,
It's a reflection of history, culture, economics even,
Right.
politics. Like, you really can't separate food from the context it comes from.
Totally. I mean, whether we're talking about these like crazy elaborate swan feasts or, a guy just trying to sell hamburgers.
Engström and this flattened meatballs.
Exactly. Every meal tells a story, doesn't it?
It really does. And it makes you think about our own food choices today, right?
Yeah, like what are the stories that our meals are telling?
Exactly. What we eat can be a statement about our values, our cultural background, like our beliefs about health and sustainability.
It's like we're all kind of culinary storytellers, in a way, shaping the future of food with every meal.
I love that. So to wrap things up, let's leave our listeners with a question. What food rules or traditions would you like to break or challenge?
Good question. It could be anything, right?
Exactly. Maybe you've got like a secret family recipe that you want to give a modern twist.
Or maybe you're dreaming up a feast that would make even Nicodemus Tessin jealous.
Ooh, now that's a challenge.
No matter what it is, embrace that inner culinary rebel. See where it takes you. You never know. You might just spark the next food revolution.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Happy eating, everyone.